Thank you for watching QTV with the news. My name is SUMBWE. We take a look at stories making headlines. The Zambian and Zimbabwean governments have settled for a consortium of Power Construction Corporation of China Limited and General Electric as developers of the Batoka Gorge hydroelectric project. A Zambian truck driver has been burned to death after an acid tanker he was driving lost control before bursting into flames in South Africa. And police in Lusaka have arrested 3 ex-convicts in connection with a spate of robberies. And our details in our news. The Zambian and Zimbabwean governments have reached an emergency decision to award the development of the 2,400 megawatts Batoka Gorge hydroelectric scheme project to the consortium of Power Construction Corporation of China Limited and General Electric on a build, operate and transfer financial model. Speaking during a media briefing, Energy Minister Matthew Nkua says the cost of the project is roughly between 4 and 5 billion United States dollars and is expected to be completed in a period of 4 years. Mr. Nkua says the decision taken by the two countries is in order to mitigate the current power crisis within the shortest possible time and ensure the future energy security of the two nations. He says that the Council of Ministers meeting noted the two countries are facing a power crisis which has worsened by the 2017-2018 hydrological season, where the rainfall received was below normal. Mr. Nkua says the meeting further noted the need to implement measures that will ensure that the Zambezi River Authority and power utilities in the two countries remain sustainable so that they continue to discharge their mandates to ensure energy security for the citizens.
Construction is supposed to be 4 years, and the total sum is in the range of 4 to 5 billion. I will be able to give you the actual figure when we finish the negotiations. It is a good way, I must say, because even the Kariba is not completely dry. We are still generating power from the Kariba. So we will still be able to generate power. And that does not mean that we are going to sit back idle. We are still going to attend to the renewable energy solutions that are there. We are going to deal with wind and solar energy as well, and other sources of energy. But that project has been there for a long time. And the fact that we didn't have water for these other years does not necessarily mean that we will perpetually have no water in our dams. At some point, we will be having water. The amount is in US dollars. The company is Power China and GE, General Electric of America. So Power China of China have gone into partnership with the General Electric of America. So it's a China-America sort of consortium that is going to do the BOT.
Speaking at the same briefing, Zimbabwe's Minister of Energy and Power Development, Fortune Chashi, says the development of the Batoka Gorge hydroelectric project will help address the power outages being experienced in the two countries.
With respect to this very, very important and urgent project, and the position that has been taken by the Council of Ministers reflects the power situation in our respective countries. We desperately need to ensure that there is commencement of works, and this decision today is evidence of the situation on the ground. And so I want to thank my colleague from Zambia and the finance ministers here present. We have a very active interest in this project.
And Finance Minister Margaret Mwanakatwe described the project as a major development for the two countries as they will not spend any money on it.
For me in particular, the fact that we have found this consortium of well-renowned developers of power, especially hydropower, is an excellent position to be in. And it being a BOT, it means the financing is also very well structured in such a manner that the two countries need not spend any money towards this 4 to 5 billion and to be handed over to us at the end of the period. So I'm very excited today.
A 33-year-old Zambian truck driver has been burned to death after the truck he was driving lost control before bursting into flames in Middelburg, Mpumalanga Province, South Africa. Emmanuel Chitanga, holder of passport number ZN70807, died along the R555 road when the acid tanker he was driving allegedly lost control and burst into flames. According to information made available to the Zambian mission in Pretoria, the late Mr. Chitanga was driving a truck and trailer registration number AEB 1469ZM loaded with acid when it burst into flames after careering off the road. He was burnt to death as he could not be rescued from the truck. His remains have since been deposited in Middelburg Hospital mortuary. The late Mr. Chitanga was working for a Zambian import and export company based in Ndola. He is survived by a wife and 2 children. This is contained in a statement issued by Naomi Nyawali, First Secretary and Press and Public Relations at the Zambia High Commission in South Africa. Police in Lusaka have arrested 3 ex-convicts in connection with a spate of criminal activities experienced by members of the public in Avondale, Salama Park, and Ibex Hill, Mimwood between December 2018 and June 2019. Police spokesperson Esther Katongo has identified the suspected criminals as Charles Mulonda, age 32, Frank Tembo, known as Wanga, age 28, and Ernest Mwale, age 33, all ex-convicts in connection with a spate of criminal activities. She says police since recovered an AK-47 rifle suspected to have been used in aggravated robberies and other crimes. Mrs. Katongo says police also recovered 22 plasma television sets, 16 generators, home theater systems, speakers, and a microwave, among other items. She says the criminals have so far been connected to aggravated robberies, burglary, and thefts and rape. Mrs. Katongo says some items were recovered from members of the public where they were sold, while some were recovered from the suspects. She has since appealed to members of the public in the affected and surrounding areas who would have had their properties stolen to go to Simon Mwasakapwepwe police station to identify the recovered items. Action Aid Zambia Policy and Programs Head of Policy Justin Lunda has proposed that the Public Order, Electoral Process and Constitutional Amendment Bills of 2019 be withdrawn to allow for further consultations. Mr. Lunda says if passed by Parliament, the bills will be a recipe for anarchy, abuse of citizens' rights and leading to poor governance. He has described the move to reduce campaign period from 90 days to 60 days as politically motivated, saying this will negatively affect opposition political parties participating in elections. We have more details in this report.
Tempers were high among some members of parliament after Action Aid Zambia made a statement based on their research that Zambians are losing confidence in the governance system.
Sorry, Chair, maybe just to make one clarification, I think it is based on the questions that came from the members of parliament. Otherwise, we wouldn't have touched on these issues. But we thought maybe members of parliament wanted to create a platform where we could talk. You know, for example, the members were asking about
brought out the truth, and then we feel, you know, they're not right. It's not right. What they've said is that is as things as they see.
Exactly.
So they've told us. Are we saying that we don't want the truth?
No, Honorable
If we
Member.
don't want the truth,
Honorable
then let's
Member.
accept lies.
Correct.
Honorable Member, we are here to ask questions. So
We have asked questions and he has answered all the questions. All the answering is coming from the questions.
Honorable Member from Kasenengo.
Thank you.
Ask the question.
What is your problem? Man, are you the chairman?
Action Aid Zambia made their submission on Public Order Bill, Electoral Process Bill and Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2019 to Parliamentary Committee on Legal Affairs, Human Rights, National Guidance, Gender Matters and Governance. During this meeting, Action Aid Policy and Programs Head Justin Lunda proposed that the 3 bills should be withdrawn for further consultations.
I think there is need not to rush this process in the manner it has been managed, but to relook at how best we can strengthen some of the negative areas, the gray areas which have been identified by many people in the communities of Zambia.
And Action Aid Zambia governance activist Geoffrey Sizala has challenged members of parliament to ensure that they defend the constitution, saying the National Dialogue Forum was not inclusive.
This is indeed a test for you, honorable members of parliament, because the nation is really watching and also to see what kind of decision we are going to make. Like he has already indicated that the process was not all inclusive.
Parliamentary Committee Chairperson Matthew Jerry assures them that their recommendations will be considered. Favorite Kalando, QTV News, and Lusaka.
Vice President Inonge Wina says government has reached an understanding with traditional leaders on how land should be managed in the country. Mrs. Wina says this follows a meeting the Ministry of Lands and the House of Chiefs held on Thursday, 11 July, on the provision of the draft National Land Policy. She has told Parliament during the Vice President's question time that it is therefore hoped that it will not be long before the draft National Land Policy is taken to Parliament for approval. Mrs. Wina was responding to a question by Chimwemwe Member of Parliament Elias Mwila, who wanted to know when government will take the Land Policy Bill to Parliament for enactment.
When it's done in bringing the land policy bill before this house for enactment so that our people can start guided on matters affecting them and matters on the affecting the spirit.
This year they've taken long because the Ministry of Lands had to consult a number of stakeholders, including our traditional chiefs. But I can report to the House that by yesterday, the Minister of Lands they met the chiefs and they finalized and come to an understanding of how land should be managed in the country. And I hope it will not be too long before the land policy is approved by the Parliament so that we can move forward. To get the inequalities that we see in the land allocations.
And Mrs. Wina told the House that the number of districts receiving relief food has now risen to 86. She says the increased number of districts has been captured in the compiled in-depth vulnerability and needs assessment report on the hunger situation in the country. She was responding to a question by leader of the opposition Jack Mwimbu, who wanted to know why some districts with big populations are being provided with less relief food than they need.
Your Honor, the Vice President, you are aware that in most of these wards, there are more than 10,000 households. How do you expect more than 10,000 people to share 200 by 12.5 kg of milk? How do you expect them to share that?
I reported to the House that another in-depth vulnerability needs assessment has been undertaken and the report is out. So instead of dealing with the 38 districts in the last this time we are dealing with 86 districts that are deficient. But as such, some of the areas that the honorable member is saying that they are not receiving adequate training, they will receive. And the vulnerability assessment.
Foreign Affairs Minister Joseph Malanji says President Edgar Lungu cannot intervene in the situation in Malawi as chairperson of the SADC organ on politics, defense and security because the matter is in the courts of law for now. In an interview with Q News, Mr. Malanji says the SADC chairperson has advised all stakeholders to, for now, wait for the determination of the matter by the courts of law in that country. He says depending on the ruling of the courts and whether the situation persists, the SADC chairperson will step in to engage the government of Malawi and try to mediate.
What you have to realize is the matter is in the courts of law. So as for now, it's we can wait under the sovereign jacket. After that, that's when now we can engage the Malawi executive, as in government, to see how way forward as chair of the organ we can help out and mediate if at all the situation persists. We are aware there are some points here and there of demonstrations, but our advice that we gave to all stakeholders is to be patient and wait for the determination of the Constitutional Court of Malawi.
Meanwhile, Mr. Malanji says the recent cancellation of Zambia's debt by China is based on the rapport and good bilateral ties that exist between China and Zambia. He says people should look at the global economics and see where Zambia stands in its relationship with China. Mr. Malanji has stressed that Zambia is the first country in the SADC region to establish bilateral ties with China, a situation he says has created a lot of confidence.
One will have to look at the global economics. Then you understand where we stand with our relationship with China and what is China's GDP and what is China's capacity. You know, China, when you look at Zambia, we are the first country in the SADC region to establish bilateral ties with China. And China has got a lot of confidence in Zambia, considering from inception, we've never let them down. And our foreign policy, underlining economic diplomacy, is coming to fruition. We've got very good relationship with China, and they are writing off that giving us the debt relief is basically our rapport, is based on our rapport with the People's Republic of China. It is not.
Transparency International Zambia has urged the Anti-Corruption Commission to consider appealing against the acquittal of Housing and Infrastructure Development Minister Ronald Chitotela if it is not satisfied with the court's ruling. The Lusaka Magistrate Court on Thursday acquitted Mr. Chitotela and his co-accused, who were charged with possession and concealing of property suspected to be proceeds of crime. TIZ Executive Director Wesley Chibamba says his organization is expectant to see the next action the ACC would take following Mr. Chitotela's acquittal. Mr. Chibamba adds that TIZ is studying the ruling of the court.
We have taken note of the acquittal of Honorable Ronald Chitotela as Transparency International Zambia with great interest, I should say. This time around, we are going to take occasion to study the judgment, and after that, we are, of course, going to give a comprehensive and more detailed comment on that. But we are anxious to see what next from the Anti-Corruption Commission. We want to know if they are going to appeal this decision or not, and basically just to explore that option, because that is another option on the table. Of course, the law can be quite technical sometimes. Even when someone is acquitted, it may not necessarily mean they are not guilty, but maybe there is not sufficient evidence to actually convict them. So for now, we are going to study the judgment, then we'll give a more detailed statement, and of course wait to hear from the Anti-Corruption Commission if they are going to appeal that decision, which we hope they are going to do.
Meanwhile, Zambia Council for Social Development Acting Executive Director Pasco Bwalia has welcomed Mr. Chitotela's acquittal, saying it was expected. But Operation Young Vote Executive Director Guest Nyirenda wants clarification on which charges exactly Mr. Chitotela has been cleared of.
There should have been clarity, because there were a lot of corruption allegations that were leveled against him. And also, if the acquittal is on a technicality, then it doesn't cleanse him of having abused or having, been engaged in corruption. So it must be very clear to us: is the acquittal on technicality that the alleged owners of the finances or whatever it is had no issues with the program or the problem. So we must know, because if really it is on technicality, then he doesn't stand clean.
We have gotten the acquittal of Mr. Chitotela, Honorable Minister of Infrastructure Development. with well, a kind of mixed feelings. One is the fact that I think there were sentiments by government officials even before the case was disposed of that he was actually innocent, and we believe that may have had a bearing on the outcome, the final outcome that has come in.
The Human Rights Commission has strongly condemned the beating up of its member of staff and a member of the public who was wearing a Patriotic Front T-shirt by UPND supporters during the filing of nominations by their candidate for the Katuba parliamentary by-election. Commission spokesperson Mwelwa Mulea has described as barbaric the harassment of Human Rights Commission Materials Production Officer Oscar Chisenga and an individual wearing a Patriotic Front T-shirt by UPND supporters. Mr. Mulea says the Commission is calling on the UPND leadership to identify and hand over to police the perpetrators to demonstrate that their call for non-violence is not a mere rhetoric. He states that condemning violence without bringing perpetrators to account for their action is meaningless and implies supporting the crime. Mr. Mulea says the Commission is saddened that the party cadres harassed and beat up Mr. Chisenga before snatching a wallet containing his personal effects and a Commission mobile tablet, which he was using to video record them as they attacked an individual who was wearing PF regalia. He says the beating up of an individual who was wearing PF regalia was an act of high levels of intolerance and lack of civility and undemocratic conduct that must be roundly condemned. Transparency International Zambia TIZ Executive Director Wesley Chibamba has charged that government is being mischievous in its dealings with regards to the Access to Information Bill. Speaking in Lusaka during the launch of the State of the Media in Zambia first quarter report, Mr. Chibamba says if government meant well, it could have released the bill to the public for scrutiny. Mr. Chibamba has urged government to present the Access to Information Bill to Parliament during this session as a matter of human rights and good governance. Here's a report.
The media in Zambia in the first quarter of 2019 was dominated by a number of issues: the harassment and eventual suspension of Prime TV's broadcasting license and continued incarceration of Derek Sinjela, the news editor for a publication called the Rainbow newspaper. This is according to the University of Zambia researcher Brenda Bukowa, who made a presentation on the state of the media in the first quarter of 2019.
Harassment, as I mentioned already, our colleagues from United Voice Radio were harassed. And we had also a number of cases where our colleagues in the media were harassed, were attacked, were ordered not to publish ABCD. So if we were to look at freedoms of the press, we would actually say that we actually encountered much more negatives than positives during this period.
And speaking when launching the report, Transparency International Zambia Executive Director Wesley Chibamba accused government of being mischievous in its dealing with the Access to Information Bill.
This is a bill that has been a subject of debate from the year 2002. Yes, we could be excited that they approved it, but I think we needed to see it tabled before Parliament. Freedom of media and access to information is an integral element in any functioning democracy, and it is essential for the protection of other fundamental human rights.
For MISA Zambia board member Martin Akende is worried at the state of the media in Zambia and called on government to speed up the process of enacting the ATI as it will help the media to hold the office bearers accountable. While Frederick Ebert Stifton Country Director Hamid Isha has advised the media to collect issues that affect the people and tell them of their responsibility.
For this reason that we appeal to the government to speed up the process of enacting the Access to Information ATI bill, which we were informed in the first quarter of this year that it has been approved by Cabinet. It is without doubt that the ATI will enhance and promote a well-balanced and investigative media.
They come, they discuss with us, and they pretend to address issues, but we analyze, and probably I don't know whether this is also one reason that there is a time span 2019 minus 2002.
The Access to Information Bill has been a subject of debate since the year 2002. Brenda Bukowa is worried and recommended on the need for the media to increase news coverage relating to ATI aimed at increased advocacy for its enactment.
Urgent need. We that are gathered here with other stakeholders, there's urgent need for us to advocate for the tabling of ATI in Parliament. Now remember, whilst we're advocating for the tabling of ATI in Parliament, let's remember that we should also know what is contained in the bill. Because once it is enacted and it has things that we don't approve of, it will be a big loss for us.
Currently, Parliament is sitting and is expected to adjourn on the 2nd of August 2019. But all these stakeholders who gathered during the launch of the State of the Media first quarter report, all they want is government to table this bill during this sitting. But will Information and Broadcasting Minister Doris Leah grant them their wish? Favorite Kalando, QTV News in Lusaka.
Former Transport and Communications Minister William Harrington has challenged government to confirm or deny whether the IMF and the World Bank are responsible for the delay in the reintroducing the national airline. Mr. Harrington, who has described the reintroduction of the national airline as a political project, is skeptical over the whole project, especially with the deafening silence on the feasibility study regarding the sustainability and profitability of the national airline. He has wondered how government will ensure the sustainability and profitability of the airline when a big airline such as South African Airways is struggling to operate viably and continues to depend on government bailout for survival. Mr. Harrington has stressed the need for government to give adequate information regarding the reintroducing of the national airline and whether or not the World Bank and the IMF will support the project.
One will have to look at the global.
There was a government assurance that the new airline would be flying in the first quarter of 2019. This is now July 2019. There's been a deafening silence from government. So now I want to challenge government to confirm or deny whether the IMF and the World Bank are keen to support this project called SUMBWE Airways, especially in the light of the view of the fact that the government has announced or embarked on austerity measures, and also that government has announced that no projects which have not yet reached, all projects which have not yet reached 80% of their establishment would not be, there will be no funding, or that the funding will be on hold for all projects which are reached less than.
Pana and Pioneer Seed companies have merged to operate under the parent name Corteva Zambia in an effort to improve on the provision of agriculture products in the country. Corteva, also known as Corteva Agri-Science, a major American agriculture chemical and seed company that operates globally but has now been launched in Zambia to take up Pana Seeds and Pioneer Agriculture Limited. Speaking during the launch of the company in Lusaka, Corteva Agri-Science President for Middle East Africa, Bardet Bajwa, says Zambia has been picked to be one of the major destinations for the company in Africa, as it is a strategic market for East and Southern Africa for agriculture and food products.
So we're just launching the new name. I'm sure Nambi or others will talk about what it means. Corteva is made of two words. Core is core or the heart. Teva means nature. So literally the word Corteva means the heart or the core of nature. That's what we believe, that's what we stand for. We have 22,000 employees globally, world over, who wake up every morning thinking only about agriculture. And Zambia also, wonderful business team we have, both the brands Pioneer, Pana are represented very well in this market. One of our largest seed production hubs, like I mentioned, also have a research capability here. So it's a complete agricultural business for us in Eastern Africa.
And Corteva Zambia Commercial Unit Leader Samson Yendo has assured cooperating partners that Pana will be a trusted partner in the agriculture and food sectors. And Zambia National Farmers Union President Jervis Zimba says there is an abundant desire for seed varieties among farmers, and that the service provided by companies such as Koteva excites the union and therefore wins its full support.
I would like to assure all our cooperating partners present, our key stakeholders, that you can trust us. We will continue to be your trusted partner in the agriculture and food space. And we'll continue to collaborate with our stakeholders, the key players in the agriculture sector, the Zambia National Farmers Union, representing the many of the farmers across the country, the Conservation Farming Unit, and other key stakeholders that are too numerous for me to mention right now. So we'll continue to collaborate.
There is an abundant desire for seed technologies among our farmers, and we're excited with the efforts being made by big companies such as Koteva Agriscience through the supply of appropriate seed, which is much needed to produce the grain, which is so much demand for national food security and to satisfy the export markets. ZNFU has formidable structures which can be used to introduce to farmers for the benefit which will bring to the farming community.
Government has reassured the business community that Zambia's new trade policy will address issues of competitiveness once the African Continental Free Trade Area AfCFTA is ratified. Minister of Commerce, Trade and Industry Christopher Yaruma says the newly launched trade policy has been designed to respond to the trade environment trade blocs such as the AfCFTA will bring about. Mr. Yaruma told Parliament that the trade policy has also taken into consideration the emerge of e-commerce. He said this in response to questions on points of clarification on his ministerial statement to update the House on the launch of the trade policy.
Could you please give us some details of how you're going to deal with issues of competitiveness, tariff reduction, and non-tariff barrier reduction? More especially to explain the new things that you are thinking in these areas as compared to what is obtaining today. What are the new things?
Remember what we used to do previously with the previous trade policies, commission, which were the commission, trade, and industries. That has been superseded by the new developments. The economic trade today is highly dynamic. The changes which are effective change to move from that back to one is to include things to omitted or constrained. Things like today, we're talking of e-commerce.
First Lady Esther Lungu has called for increased public awareness on the reasons for the declining environment. Speaking during the Special University of Zambia Women's Day celebration, Mrs. Lungu says protecting the environment is a matter of great importance that should be taken up by all. She has appealed to Zambians to do everything possible to save the environment by ensuring that the surrounding in the locations, towns, cities and chiefdoms are kept clean. Mrs. Lungu says women remain the most affected because of their integral role as the caregivers who draw a lot of resource from the environment such as water, medicine, energy, food, among other things.
This day is set aside for us to call for concerted efforts at all levels of our society towards addressing the critical challenges posed by climate change. It is a day that should remind all of us to think deeply on what we can do to mitigate environmental degradation. Thank you once again to Rwanda for being such a good example for Africa. Zambians, like the minister said, please let us get rid of this statement of Boma Yanganepo. Tianganepo teka.
Speaking at the same event, Rwanda's High Commissioner to Zambia, Monique Maruliza, has hailed the role women continue to play in ensuring the cleanliness of their homes, neighborhoods, workplaces, and cities in general. And Minister of Higher Education, Professor Nkanduluo, has encouraged society not to look down on women.
The Vision 2020 document was discussed countrywide and adopted, setting national development targets and priorities for the next 20 years. The main objective of Vision 2020 is to transform Rwanda into a knowledge-based middle-income country, thereby reducing poverty, health problems, and making the country united and democratic. This vision had 9 pillars that inform all efforts and activities being undertaken in Rwanda.
And I think one notable thing was this concept of Boma Yanganepo. And I think as Zambians, we really need to interrogate ourselves and move away from this space of Boma Yanganepo and take the lead. I think the second important thing that she said was the role of women in all that happened. And I want to share why I think the women have taken up the lead. When there's any problems in any country, the men run away. The women remain behind. And in trying to pick their children, some of them are imprisoned, they are raped, they are abused. So I think the suffering that was in Uganda, in Rwanda, was much felt by the women.
To end the news, we take a look at stories making headlines. The Zambian and Zimbabwean governments have settled for a consortium of Power Construction Corporation of China Limited and General Electric as developers of the Batoka Gorge hydroelectric project. A Zambian truck driver has been burnt to death after an acid tanker he was driving lost control before bursting into flames in South Africa. And police in Lusaka have arrested 3 ex-convicts in connection with a spate of robberies. On that note, we come to the end of the news. Thank you for watching.